Let's bring in our analyst now, foreign affairs commentator Calvin Dark, a friend of the House. He joins me from Washington, and foreign affairs and strategy analyst Adam Roosevelt in Dubai. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on the program.
Good to be here.
Let's begin with you, Calvin. Liz Cheney lost in Wyoming. We know this is backlash for her voting for former President Trump's impeachment in Congress. She's also chair of the committee investigating the attack on the Capitol. Will this affect her role and the job of the committee going forward?
I think this loss actually will magnify her role in this committee, because normally if you have a sitting member of Congress that loses in a primary, they become what we call a lame duck, and they don't have much influence. In Cheney's case, because she made her case last night that she has one mission now that she lost re-election, and that is to make sure that Trump doesn't get in the Oval Office, she has the biggest possible congressional megaphone with the committee to, continue to have the hearings, hear the testimonies, and then, of course, the report that we're all anxious to see before this year ends. So I think in this situation, it amplifies her position and the megaphone that she has.
Adam, do you also agree with Calvin on this?
Well, I think he's made some interesting points. I would say that from a procedural perspective, the committee has already defined how they would investigate President Trump, looking into what he may have been involved in to incite the violence. But they'd also be collaborating with the FBI and other government organizations. I don't believe that Cheney, as the vice chair, being removed from her congressional seat will have a significant impact, primarily because the procedure is already set in terms of what the committee's powers will allow in terms of this investigation, and what is already moving forward in motion will effectively define the outcome specifically. Not one person will really be the champion, so to speak, but they will all have individual personalities in this process. But the committee as a body is the deciding procedural entity.
But perhaps to you, Adam, she's still in the Republican Party. She's promised to continue to fight against Trump's influence on the party. Could that be detrimental to her remaining in the party or playing any other leading role there?
Well, I think we can all agree that Congresswoman Cheney is in the minority. But there is a lot of power still within the Cheney family in terms of working behind the scenes to fund and build coalitions that would fund positions against the president. Now, she has been identified as a rhino. Republican in name only is the definition of this term, but there's still a lot of strategic tools that the Cheney family has developed over the years. Most people don't know and don't see those type of tools deployed behind the scenes. But I will tell you that money also is an influencing factor. Cheney family is still very strong in the business community. I do think that they can join forces with the Democratic Party covertly and still have some small support from the Republican parties who are dissidents. But I think that they have a lot of power because the Democrats are standing behind this investigation and going after Trump.
And to you, Calvin, the November polls are only a little more than a couple of months away. These 10 Republicans who sided against Trump, most of them will likely lose their seats. How do you predict that will reflect on the midterms? And will it also affect how much President Biden is able to achieve in the remaining 2 years?
Well, as far as how it will affect Biden's agenda, I don't think it'll have that much of effect, not having these Republicans that voted against Trump, just because it's going to depend on whether or not Democrats can retain control of the House and Senate. Now, one way that it may have an effect is these very pro-Trump voices that are going to be replacing a lot of these members of Congress can make a lot of noise. That's a lot bigger than the vote or the committee assignments that they get. So I think from a public relations standpoint, it's going to be more difficult for Biden, but practically it's going to depend on whether or not the Democrats or Republicans win in the midterms with the control of the House and Senate.
Adam, what are your predictions for the midterms?
Well, this is my favorite question of today, and I will tell you that President Biden has been in office just a little bit under 2 years. And now we've got major topics surrounding the globe, Russia-Ukraine war, also the Afghanistan withdrawal, increasing inflation, all these different things in terms of taxing the middle class. These are now becoming some of the biggest issues that will really be the deciding factor once you aggregate Biden's performance, whether or not he has a strong chance in 2024. So I think right now, America's being viewed as we've lost our position in peace and security. Biden will have to work with his administration to rebuild that positive image. But right now, I would say that America is in a different position negatively before the Biden administration won the election. And now he's being judged on so many factors domestically and from a foreign policy perspective.
Perhaps, Adam, to you, would you say that Trump is the strongest Republican candidate to be ever fielded?
I can't say definitively that Trump is the strongest candidate to be ever fielded. I think it's a combination of what you see. There's a lot of great leaders in the Republican Party that bring forth all different types of diverse backgrounds, from a business perspective, from youth engagement to public policy. I just think that right now Trump is the leader of the Republican Party. He's the loudest person you'll probably see. And I think he has the capability to use the megaphone to be the loudest Republican for another decade. And I don't see many people competing because he does have the engine behind him to continue leading and take full control of the Republican Party, which he maintains.
Calvin, your idea of former President Trump?
Well, I think that he definitely is the loudest in the Republican Party and will definitely win the primary. Now, whether he's the best, that definitely remains to be seen. But when it comes to Biden, as you were mentioning, I really hope that in the midterms, Biden is judged on his record when voters think about the fact that we now have legislation that improves health care, lowers prescription drugs, cleans up the environment in a way that we never have. We have gun reform that we never thought was possible. Inflation's going down. So I think that President Biden and the Democrats do have a strong case to make. And I think that, combined with the fact that the Republicans are just going to be talking about what Trump did or didn't do in Mar-a-Lago and other places, it gives the Democrats a good chance in November.
Exactly. Perhaps that was going to be my last question in terms of how Americans are divided on, the results, the FBI search in Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence, the Attorney General facing pressure to order the release of the arrest warrants, and, how this could impact the investigation into the classified documents found at his residence.
Well, I think that Americans are divided. I really hope, though, that this situation, in Mar-a-Lago with the documents that I understand there's a political dimension that we can't ignore, but I hope that the justice part of it is allowed to pursue, that if President Trump is guilty of something or needs to be charged, that he will be. And if he's not, that he won't, that this will not become a political maneuver. But like I said, in this environment, it's going to be hard. I just hope the Department of Justice just sticks to their investigation and isn't influenced one way or the other by political pressure.
And Adam, do you agree as well?
Well, I spent most of my career in the intelligence community and with the DOD. So I've had to go through the classification process of learning how the guidelines work, and the power of how these classification guidelines are passed down actually fall within the power of the president. So it's one of those cases where if Trump has, as what you call the original classification authority, which he is, he properly declassified information, or if he had classified information and he moved it to another classified facility during the time he was approved to do that. There's a lot of factors here that the Department of Justice will have to evaluate. But the biggest key factor here is that the president does have the authority as the ultimate original classification authority. It's called the OCA under the guidelines of classifying documents. There's a lot of factors that have to be considered here. It is not just a simple raid into the Mar-a-Lago residence, but looking at presidential authorities and what documents were on the premise at Mar-a-Lago when they entered the residence.
Well, I'd like to appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Foreign Affairs commentator Calvin Dark, thank you. And Foreign Affairs strategy analyst Adam Roosevelt, thank you.